Lesson 18. Linear or contextual logic. Considering your last lesson, how can a cross-cultural witness avoid worldview conflict? You must first understand your own worldview. Then, as you carry the message to someone of another culture, you must learn their worldview. In some ways they will be alike, in other ways they will differ. You want to avoid offense and unneeded conflict, so you need the Spirit's discernment and wisdom. Your next lessons will examine 6 pairs of worldview components that can cause tension between people, and you will see what the Word teaches about them. The first pair has linear logic on one end of a line and contextual logic on the other. What do you see happening in this picture? Mr. Red shot Mr. Green in the arm. All right, but did you see the bullet? Did you see the gun actually fire? How do you know that Mr. Green did not fall and hurt his elbow? Or maybe he shot himself and Mr. Red took the gun away from him. Based on the picture, no positive statement can be made. You will answer according to the rules of your logic, which is part of your worldview. What you accept as evidence and what another person accepts may be different. Logic is not the same everywhere. It differs from culture to culture and sometimes from person to person in the same culture. You may assume that your kind of logic is universal. Then you meet someone from another culture who does not follow the same logic. How do you react? The world has 2 major systems of logic, linear and contextual. Western educated people tend to use linear logic. When they see the picture of the 2 men, they will ask, what happened? Then they will want to know, who did it? The picture seems clear. Mr. Red is holding the smoking gun, which is the cause. Mr. Green seems to be holding his elbow in pain, which is the effect. This is linear thinking, assuming a direct cause and effect event. Non-Westerners, who make up the majority world, tend to use contextual logic. They might ask, why did he do it? They will wonder, how are the men related? What is the reason for the happening? What personal pressures are they feeling? What was the weather like? What time of day was it? What was going on with their families? Because the emphasis is on examining the event in its context or surroundings. This is called contextual thinking. Linear thinkers might ignore such evidence. They may consider such logic rambling, not organized, and too emotional. Non-Westerners consider their contextual or holistic thinking complete and reasonable. Such a case heard by a sitting court of elders in an African village would thoroughly discuss the whole context of such an incident. They attempt to understand why the matter took place and how to restore balance in a disturbed group. A conclusion is reached slowly to allow time to consider all the issues.
Let's consider another example. Let us say a cow walks into the neighbor's garden and begins eating the vegetables. Linear logic will ask, where is the herd boy responsible for the cow? Why isn't he doing his job? It is his fault the cow is in the neighbor's garden. Contextual logic will not ask those questions. They will know who is responsible. What they may ask is, why did this happen? Why did the cow go into this specific garden? Why did it go into any garden at all? What moved the cow to act in that way? Such a simple case would only take 15 minutes in a room of an urban courthouse. The judge would have 2 questions. Who is right? Who is wrong? They would decide who had not done their duty and what the punishment should be. The case might easily take half a day in the court of the African village. They would try to understand why the cow went into the garden and how to restore balance in the neighborhood. They would decide how the man whose garden was damaged should be repaid and how the cow could be prevented from doing that again. The herd boy is not usually punished, even though he may have been off catching a field mouse to roast for lunch. Why punish him for doing what boys do? What is important is finding out what caused the cow to act in that way. Then good relations must be restored between the owners of the cow and the owners of the garden. The goal is peace, not anger, in the neighborhood. So a wide range of evidence is considered in seeking to solve a problem. It is not just a direct relation between an effect and its cause, or an effort to affix blame. Remembering your last few lessons, you might say that these ways of coming to a conclusion are not right or wrong, simply different. The difference in these ways of looking at the world goes back to the core of a culture. Different assumptions are held about what is real and what is important.
The Word is basically an Eastern book, comprised of 75% Semitic narrative, 15% poetry, and 10% is linear logic, or thought organized. No group of people, however, is completely one or the other, but on a scale. You are somewhere on a line drawn between the 2 ways of thinking, closer to the linear end of the line or nearer the contextual end of the line. Few people are at either extreme. Both patterns have strengths and weaknesses, and the value is in being able to recognize both. You must learn how to work and speak within the thought patterns of the people you seek to reach. The letter to Rome is one example of linear thinking. Paul builds an argument point by point and then concludes with a therefore. Its propositions can be easily outlined. If this, and this are true, then we conclude that. Paul had been influenced by Greek and Roman logic and he was writing to people of Rome. The use of parables illustrates contextual logic taught by showing a truth in its context as a part of everyday life. The African use of stories and Middle Eastern use of fables and proverbs are very similar. Learning occurs by way of narrative, rather than by points of an argument.
As a cross-cultural teacher, you need to value both kinds of thinking and use them both. We should become all things to all people so that by all possible means we might reach some. Using the logic most familiar to the culture you are trying to reach will be most effective. This lesson is important because it explores different ways of thinking and looking at the world. Anyone who wants to speak into the life of another person seeks to be understood. So, you must do so in a way that makes sense and conveys truth to that person. As the world gets smaller due to education and technology, more people are becoming linear in their thinking. Often unreached people groups and oral learners, however, respond more to stories and contextual logic. The main truth of this lesson is that the word contains both linear and contextual logic. Let's review the lesson. Question 1. What are the two major systems of logic in the world? If you said, the two major systems are linear logic and contextual logic, you are correct. Question 2. What kind of logic does the word contain? If you said that the word contains both contextual and linear logic, you are right. Question 3. As a teacher, what kind of logic should you use to present your lessons? If you said, we can use both kinds of logic to present our lessons, but using the one most familiar to the culture will be most effective, you are correct. Your assignment for this lesson is to listen to it several times until you can tell the story of the boy and the cow in your own words. Try to explain the difference between linear and contextual logic to some of your friends. Discuss which kind of logic is most common to the people in your community.